Hey there, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. It's been a year, almost to the day, since I did a gardening question and answer. Come with me, let's go. Okay, well, garden question and answer is where I take your comments from the comment thread and I select ones that I know the answer or I think I know the answer and we go through them. And so let's get on with number one. Our first question comes from Richard FY2MU. I don't know what that means, but Richard asks, those Home Depot buckets I see, kind of like the 5-gallon bucket I'm sitting on right now, he's been told that they're harmful plastics and we shouldn't grow in them. And he asks, is that an urban myth or can we use the 5-gallon buckets they sell for $5? Well, all plastics these days, like this plastic potter, come with a triangle code on the back. I don't know if you can see it there. It's right where my finger is. This one's not imprinted very much, very strongly. But there are two of them here. There's a triangle with a number 2 on it, and it says HDPE on the bottom, and then there's a triangle with a number 5 on it. So this is two kinds of plastic, and it says PP. The 2 and the 5, I believe, are considered the safest. Almost one of those two is food grade, and you can grow in those. The 5-gallon buckets that come from Home Depot, I think, have a code 3. I'm not sure. I can't find the one on the bucket I'm sitting on. And sometimes those can give off harmful plastic chemicals that, you know, they do get in your soil. Here's the deal, though. I don't care about that. It doesn't bother me. I've been eating food out of 5-gallon buckets, plants that were grown in there for, 20 years, and it's not a big deal in my opinion. Again, that's for you to make the decision, but certainly be aware that different plastics do vent off different kinds of, components into your soil and into the air, and you want to check that code. Question number 2 comes from Most Unique Mary. Thank you for asking questions and thank you for joining in the conversation. Hey there, Mr. Scott, great video. Do you think I could flame throw weeds in metal beds like this one I've got here? They've got several of those and it would be a good thing to clean up since they've got a lot of weeds. Well, let's take a look at it. These beds are in fact metal. And there's several places that manufacture these kinds of beds. The only thing that I think you could flame weed this just fine, except for this plastic around the edge. Now you could pull it off. They do come off real easy. I don't see why I couldn't flame weed this bed though. Look at my little sweet potatoes coming up. Volunteer every year. But you might char and discolor the inside. And if you're okay with that, well, that's not a problem. But pull some weeds while I'm here. But flame weeding, yeah, it's a real good option for killing the surface weeds. Many of the roots come back, so, if you want to give it a go, just make sure you're mindful of this plastic strip. Well, in all the excitement to pull off an experiment for the sake of question number 3, I failed to record the question itself, so it's after the fact. I'm editing this video right now, and I discovered this. So question number 3, Tiffany LaRouche says, can I use a bunch of free bags of topsoil I have for potted plants? Free bags of topsoil. I would say if you have not put that topsoil in a pot, don't do it, and here's why. So this is what you want to get when you're potting in containers. You want to get a potting mix. It's also called potting soil in some places. It's light and drains well, but you specifically want to get that. You don't want to use this stuff over here. That's a bag of topsoil and it's real dense. Let's do an experiment. Really? I'm trying to do an experiment here. All right. Here's the difference between topsoil, which we have here, and garden potting, potting mix or potting soil. Potting soil has a lot of organic matter in it. It's light. It's physically lighter than the topsoil. But the problem is, because it has the problem with topsoil is it's dense and it doesn't drain well. Topsoil is good for filling low spots in your yard. That's about it. The organic matter in this mix helps it to drain well. This has got sand, it's got some compost, it does have probably some topsoil in it. It's the addition of all those other things that keep it light. And we're going to put some water in these and see how they drain. We're going to watch and see if we can get water to come out through the bottom. See how quickly that water goes away in this potting mix? And there it is coming out the bottom. That's how quickly it drains. The water goes straight through it. Now it'll hold on to some moisture, but let's do this topsoil over here. Well, I just spilled water, so I guess we're not going to be able to tell. But what you can see is it's basically sitting on top right now. It's taking a real long time to drain. That's not good. What will happen is this topsoil will get saturated and it'll either dry out real quick after it gets saturated and crack, and it's just not a good place for your root, or it'll hang on to all that water and there'll be too much moisture in there and your roots will rot. See how slow that topsoil is taking up this water? While the garden potting mix, it just goes right through. So that's the difference. Never use topsoil in your potted plants. It's a recipe for disaster. All right, next question comes from Ralph 601. Ralph says, how do you process your rosemary? He's got a bush a little bit bigger than mine and was wondering if I prune or just cut what I need. Well, this is my wonderful rosemary. It has survived through very hot summers and a very cold winter, and it's thriving. I love the smell of that. So I have cut it, hung it to dry in my kitchen, and that works if you want to preserve some of it. But since the thing is so resilient, I just come out and snip what I need when I need it. Now the problem with a big plant like this is the rosemary stems get real thick down in here, thick as a pencil. That's okay if you're just using the leaves, Yeah, plant some rosemary. These things grow like weeds around here, and it's just one of the most pleasant plants in the garden. That smell. And it's evergreen. It stays alive year round. So I planted these 2 years ago when I put the herb bed over here. But yeah, you can, like I said, you can dry them like you can any herb. Just cut them off and hang them in the kitchen or something and keep them where there's airflow, and they'll dry out. And then you can preserve them, strip the leaves and put them in a jar, ground them up if you want. But yeah, I just come and take what I need. What a blessing, huh? All right, well, I've got question number 5 comes from Carol Showen 7639, and she's got a couple of big tubs for her plants. Can I put twigs and branches in the bottom, then the potting soil on top to save on potting soil? Yes, in fact, if you do that on a pile on the ground, it's called hugelkultur, and that's what I've done on my big raised bed back there, that tin one. It's what I've done with a lot of my little beds. Yeah, you can do that. What you'll notice after several years is the soil will recede. And you might want to top it off at that point just if you want that volume. But yeah, all that wood and down there, I would put leaves and grass and any kind of organic matter down there, and that will rot and that will feed your soil. It's an excellent way to fill up a big container or a big tall raised bed. It's a great way to make use of all your trimmings from your vines or whatever. So yeah, go for it. The next question comes from Debbie Brady 1246. Hi Debbie, thanks for always commenting on my posts. I appreciate it. She says she's doing pepper hardening today, planted half of her tomatoes yesterday, and asks, what fertilizer do I use when I plant young tomatoes and peppers? Well, glad you would ask. When I plant them up into pots like this, I usually don't put any fertilizer in here, nor do I put any fertilizer in my seed starting mix. When my peppers are about this big, I like to get them out into the yard, and at that point I will amend the whole with a slow release fertilizer. Typically I've used Dr. Earth's. It's a nice, let's see, what is Dr. Earth's tomato blend? It's a 463. But I've also started using Ivy Organics All-Purpose because it's also a slow release organic fertilizer. It's a 333, so it's well balanced. And I use this because Charles reached out to me and asked me to try it. I did, and I like it. And so last year I became an affiliate. So I'm gonna I'm going to promote a product, not because I'm an affiliate, but because I believe in it. This is just as good as that Dr. Earth. They share a lot of the same kind of qualities. And so IV Organics all-purpose fertilizer, if you want to get 10% off, use my code GUMBO10. So I do like to use that. But again, this Dr. Earth is found just about everywhere, and it's good stuff. You can also use things like earthworm castings. You can mix your own fertilizer with blood meal and bone meal and various components. Study up on what goes into fertilizer, and you can make your own. Or you can just use compost. Or, surprise, surprise, you don't use any at all. Some of my plants I put in the garden, I didn't amend the hole. I'm going to see if there's a difference long term. This stuff, the slow release, will feed the soil. And that's what we're doing when we're fertilizing. We're feeding the organisms in the soil, because they're the organisms, and the fungi, they're the life in the soil that helps our plants take up the nutrients they need. So yeah, give IV Organics a try and buy some stuff from them. They're really cool over there. The next question comes from Jose Cisneros Jr., and it's a similar question. He noticed the developed root system on my plants that I was transplanting into the garden. I think it was the ones I was transplanting in the garden. But he's asking, what starter mix, what seed starter mix did I use, and do I always use the same one? Also, did I put a liquid feed in particular that made those roots grow? His don't usually get like that, and usually gets very thin roots. And so he's asking about these plants right here. Let me show you. These plants are waiting to go somewhere in my garden, and when I pull them out, let's see if we can do this without breaking up this soil. They've got some really wonderful roots on them. This one's looking like it hadn't had a drink for a while. Come on. Yeah, I'm gonna break up that. There we go. Look at those roots. That's what he's talking about, is a big old root system like that with nice thick roots. And he's asking, do I do anything like fertilize or use a special mix? No, I don't. Like I was just explaining on the previous question, I don't use any particular seed starting mix, just whichever one I can get hold of at the big box store. Usually it's Miracle Grow. Miracle Grow does put a little bit of pelletized fertilizer in their seed starting mix, but it's unnecessary. You don't need any kind of fertilization in seed starting. All that is in the seed is what the plant needs. In other words, let me say it better. What the plant needs is already in the seed, and it's in the cotyledons, those first two leaves that come out. It's like an egg, and it has the yolk. All the chicken needs during that time of growth in that egg is in the yolk. So you don't have to add any amendments to your seed starting mix. Now when you transfer and pot up, I guess you could add some amendments to your soil, but I don't. I don't fertilize with liquid fertilizer at this stage either. What's good about this stage is when you're planting into a larger cup before you go into the garden, the soil in here is potting soil. It's not seed starting mix, you've moved up to potting soil, which has some organic matter in here, which naturally fertilizes your plant, naturally feeds your plant. So to answer your question, no, I don't do anything special with them. I just make sure that they're well watered and cared for along their path to the garden. One thing that did occur to me is perhaps I have strong roots because their first many days as seedlings were spent on a heat mat, and I kept that heat about 80 degrees, and perhaps that promoted root growth, but I don't have any scientific reason to say that. That's just a hunch. So there you go. Okay, our next question comes from Lauren Antonia, and Lauren asks, so glad to see you back. Would you do a follow-up on your currants that you planted this past summer? Yes, I planted my black currants and white currants in this bucket, and in this bucket, and in a bed. This is what's left. There's the update. They died. They died because of the hot weather we had this summer, and now I'm growing weeds in their place. I need to get rid of these. Actually, I'm going to be planting other things in this potting soil, probably tomatoes and peppers. But there you go. The currants could not tolerate our drought and our excessive heat this year. We had an excessive heat summer that was, record book type summer, and they died. In fact, because of the summer and the winter, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 empty pots here that are growing weeds for me because everything in them died. Next question comes from Kath Phlox, and you've been part of this channel for a long time. I appreciate your questions. She says, good to see you back, Scott. How is Lucy the lemon doing? Lucy the lemon is doing great. She's got blossoms all over, and she has been a trooper. This is my Meyer lemon tree. This Meyer lemon tree has been here for years, and in the past, 3 years, has been frozen back down to the ground almost in each year, each winter. But Lucy, I wrapped the base. Got to be careful, Lucy cuts me up. I wrapped the base with a towel, and depending on the severity of the freeze we anticipate, sometimes I'll put lights under here. The one year I put lights and towels and built a tent over Lucy. We lost power, and Lucy froze. But there it is, coming back like a champ from above the graft union, and we've got blossoms all over Lucy, which is an encouragement to my wife, who loves the lemons from this tree. Lucy is, there's a manhole right here, and we're the beginning of this sewer line, so I believe Lucy is eating out of the sewer and is very healthy. Next question, Sierra 565 asks about fruit trees. I've tried to set it up where you can see these two trees right here. Sierra asks, is there a particular pruning style that's beneficial to certain trees, or is it okay to just prune them to whatever style you like? When should you start pruning? And well, yes, it helps a tree to grow and bear fruit if you prune it in an appropriate manner. This is an apple tree, and we're growing this apple tree to a modified central leader. That means we have a central leader going all the way up. We have fruiting branches that we have selected and trained and bent outward. We've trained them to go outward. I need to work on this one some more. And you can see we have fruit growing on these fruiting branches. So that's beneficial for apple trees, because apple trees grow best when grow the best fruit and most fruit on horizontal branches. The fruiting spurs come along these horizontal branches. It's not the same with some other fruit trees, but this guy is in good shape. We leave a little tuft at the top just because we can, and I'm keeping all my apple trees about this tall. I don't want them, any taller than I can reach. This peach tree, however, who has a peach on it, we are pruning this to be a open center, kind of like a goblet shape. And the reason for that is we need sunlight to get to all the fruit, all the blossoms. We need this plant to be bathed in sunlight. Here's a guy I probably should have trimmed out. But what we want is this open center without this guy. Stone fruit responds well to that. Same thing, I've got a tree just off camera there. It's the same, goes for that. So study up and find out which methods work best for your trees. You could prune an apple tree to a goblet shape, but I mean, it works better when you train them this way. Our final question comes from Jessica Silva, and she says, do I use my own seeds from my harvest? I guess, to replant it for next year. Sometimes it's kind of nice to do that. I've done it with mainly with cowpeas. When I save cowpeas and dry them out, then I have them for the next year, because the varieties that I've been planting, you can't always get them back at the seed store. So yeah, I do that, and I've done it with tomatoes. In fact, I'm doing it right now. Let me show you. Check out these little tomatoes, these cherry tomatoes. I found these at my local grocery store, and they're kind of golden orange on the bottom and purple on the top. They are delicious. I've rarely had a tomato this good. They're a product of Canada, so I don't know that they'll grow well for me, and I suspect they're probably a hybrid, but I'm going to try to grow the seeds anyway. Here are the seeds. I've dried out some of these seeds, and when they stick to the paper like this, you don't have to worry about it. Just peel off the seed with the paper and plant that seed. Now, like I said, I suspect they're hybrids, which means that I'll get a plant, I'll get tomatoes, but it might regress genetically back to one of the parents if it's a hybrid. If not, great. I got me a wonderful cherry tomato, and I can keep saving those seeds. Thanks for joining me on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. I hope we've earned your subscription, and we'll see you next time. Take care.